Give us your insights onto what's your reaction from the statement, from what Chair Powell said. Of course, we had two dissents, with one member clearly wanting more dovish rhetoric and the other more flexibility.
Right. Well, this was, as Chairman Powell said, very powerful forward guidance, because it's a clear signal the U.S. government has the fiscal space to respond to the crises. So far, we're in a conundrum because the U.S. Senate has refused to take up the charge to fill the hole. The House passed the HEROES Act many weeks ago because we understood that the recovery wasn't happening as quickly as we thought, and we were running out of the temporary measures that had been put in place back when we passed the CARES Act. So extending extra money to unemployed workers, filling the gap for the workers who have lost their health insurance so they could continue it, making sure that state and local governments would have the wherewithal as their new fiscal year started. All of those things are necessary. And this forward guidance from the Fed says, you have the fiscal space, please act.
Well, but Bill, I don't think that the forward guidance says that it has to be the Democrats' version of a stimulus bill, does it? I mean, you say the Republicans have to act. I just have to give the other side of the coin. They would say, yeah. And would you say, I guess here's my question, would any version between where the Republicans are and the Democrats be a step that is absolutely necessary right now to keep the recovery going?
We're in a very deep hole. What Senator McConnell offered was wholly inadequate for filling the gap. So it has to be much bigger. So whether we want to argue about whose package, at the moment, the Republicans have no package before us.
Okay.
So I can only go by they need to act with sincerity towards the thing that's before them, which they haven't done anything.
Okay, well, let's look at the Fed and where they are now. One of the things that the Fed is looking at is maximum employment. We know employment got just over 3%. That was great. A lot of people got jobs, including Black and Latinos. Can the Fed, though, really use monetary policy, which has to do with interest rates and buying bonds, to guide the economy in such a way that this blunt tool will somehow make sure that Black workers, Latino workers, everybody gets jobs in this economy?
When we let the economy expand to its full capacity, that is what will happen. Everyone will be able to have access to jobs. And that did happen, at least for Hispanics, back in the fall of 2019, when we finally got the Hispanic male unemployment rate to be that of the white male unemployment rate. And we continue well into February, of course, until we reached the COVID crisis. So nothing bad happened. It's clearly possible that we can have the unemployment rate at below 4% for prolonged periods, and we don't see any inflation. In fact, what we really do is guard ourselves against further inflation, because we bring in more workers, they get more experience, they get better in terms of their productivity and their capacity, and we all win in the end because we can then go deeper into the bench, so to speak, of workers without worrying about inflation. So everybody wins when we actually run the economy at full capacity. We all lose when we miss that mark.
Could we actually be doing that unwittingly, given how much pent-up demand might be out there, with people saving as well, and all of that getting released at one point once we get the vaccine? So much cash right now seems to be sitting on the sidelines.
Well, cash at the top of the income distribution is sitting on the sidelines on things that people can't spend on, travel and things like that. So I don't know that the pent-up demand is going to show itself in an inflationary way, because we have so much excess capacity in those areas. We have restaurants that are dying to reopen. We have hotels that are so empty, and airlines that would beg to have people back on board. So the pent-up demand isn't from things that we're already buying.
So, Bill, to your point then, how much of the Fed's help so far, especially now that the chair is saying that they will make changes to the Main Street lending programs to broaden their appeal, how much of all of that has really filtered into the real economy?
Well, very little in some aspects. because we have this inability to cure the disease in the United States. You had all that news about New Zealand's decline in the second quarter being less because they got the disease under control. They're the ones who need to worry about a huge springback. The United States has failed to get the disease under control, and it's no end in sight. We have the president on tape saying he even misled us, which makes it even worse for us to figure out what's the path out of this.
Well, Bill, I just have to throw in that New York City's numbers, which was the big pandemic, numbers way down, continuing to fall. There are definitely parts of the country that have gotten this under control and are moving in the right direction. I want to ask you, though, in terms of how will you know now? What are you going to watch? Because we can say, well, it's not like, are you saying we can't say we'll never have inflation again? Maybe the economy gets strong enough.Maybe there's a level of unemployment that is so low or something. What are you going to watch as an economist to say, okay, great, we let the economy run hot. You've argued for that for years. We didn't get inflation, but now we're at a point where I'm getting more watchful because I think that could happen. And people at the bottom get hit as hard or harder by inflation as people at the top of the income spectrum.
Well, right now, we're way behind on wages and earnings. And the point of letting the economy go above the 2.5% is to get out of the trap that Japan found itself in. The 2% becomes internalized by everyone as we can't raise wages more than 2%, no matter what you do. And the result is when wages fall behind, they never catch up. And we're going to need a period of catch up so that the household balance sheet can be pulled back into order. We can't have the labor share continue to decline. We're going to have to move to a position where the labor share starts to increase. And that means that inflation will have to run at a more moderate level to give that space.